the United States on Iran. So the crisis has been continuing since then in one way or the other, and that is how the present crisis has escalated into full-scale war between the regional superpower, that is Israel, and the global superpower. And 40 days of intense bombing has achieved a couple of things. One is Iran has suffered quite a lot in terms of its oil and gas infrastructure, including the gas field, plus the power stations in many places, although not as claimed by Trump, and schools, hospitals, railways, and missile uh, bases, launching pads, so on and so forth. So in that way, Iran has suffered quite a devastating attacks in all of these, including the nuclear facilities. But what surprised the whole world, including the United States and Israel, was the robust response from Iran, wherein Iran attacked with its missiles and drones almost all US bases in the Gulf region, all the 6 GCC states, plus Iraq and Jordan, and of course, Israel was one of the main targets of Iranian response. And all of these countries have suffered quite a lot of damage. Iran was able to show the lethal capacity of its short range, medium range, and long range missiles, both cruise missiles and hypersonic missiles were used. And although Israel has imposed a military blackout, not much information is coming, but whatever little has emerged, it shows extensive damage to many places in the northern part of Galilee, Haifa, Tel Aviv, Jerusalem, Beersheba, and many other places. Not only the military installations, air bases, but also Mossad, military industrial complexes, and oil refineries, so on and so forth. So, and in the Gulf countries, the damage was extensive in the state of Qatar, where the largest American base, Al Udeid, was located, and also the Fifth Fleet in Bahrain. All this is known to our viewers. I don't have to go into the details, but the important thing we have to remember in this talk is that President Trump himself acknowledged that he was surprised at the magnitude and intensity of the Iranian response, not only on its basis in the Gulf region, but also on its ally, the state of Israel. Who both of them had thought that they will launch shock and awe air attacks and decapitation attacks, and with the elimination of top military leaders, civilian leaders, and the supreme leader Ali Khamenei, there will be an upsurge of people against the regime, like it had happened few weeks ago, and that the Iranian regime would fall like the Saddam regime or the Gaddafi regime, all the Hafiz Bashar al-Assad regime, and Mubarak and Zainul Abidin in other places like Tunisia. But this never happened. The nationalist element in Iran, which speaks about civilization dating back to more than 5,000 years, rallied behind the flag and the leadership of the Islamic government republic, and they were able to show their solidarity and support to the Islamic government, which redoubled its efforts to respond to the aggression, which was not sanctioned by either U.S. Congress or the United Nations, or in clear violation of the international law and all legal principles, and also their own rules-based order, which the West claims to be upholding. So, in that way, this was an unjust war, and the nuclear issue was just the cover, whereas the real reason, as articulated by American Secretary of War and including the president, was for Iranian oil, and through Iranian oil to stop this oil not only for the exports of Iran, but also to prevent China from using the oil for its economy. And that was their larger game plan. After a couple of days of bombing, the Iranians blockaded the Strait of Hormuz within its territory, that is 12-mile zone, and they started charging toll fee of about $2 million for each ship. With the result, some ships were able to pay either in dollars or in Iranian currency, and they were allowed to go, including Pakistan and India and South Korea and many others. And this became an issue for negotiations, which finally they agreed for a 2-week ceasefire on 8th of this month, after clear indication that the United States was on the back foot. It had lost quite a few of its aircraft. Its navy had to withdraw deep into the Indian Ocean, and it had suffered many casualties in Kuwait and other GCC states. And also because of the intense bombing on Israel, where not only the US in the Gulf, but also Israel had depleted much of their anti-aircraft, anti-missile systems. So that is the Patriot, David Sling, and THAAD, and so on and so forth. So the ceasefire is holding, and negotiations took place, as you all know, in Islamabad, but nothing much was achieved. And now the negotiations are still being conducted through Pakistan. And there is this optimism relayed by President Trump that Iran has opened the Strait of Hormuz, and that it has agreed to give up its nuclear weapons and so on and so forth. You see, what happened in Islamabad was a slight change in American approach. Instead of the earlier Iranian proposal of not having a nuclear bomb, now the Trump administration adopted, under Netanyahu's pressure, Israeli agenda, that is complete giving up by Iran of the enrichment facility, that even 0% of enrichment was not allowed in the Islamabad talk, which Iran claimed under NPT for medical, educational, and other purposes, less than 10%. So this was going back, and also on the issue of Hormuz, which Iran insisted on controlling its part as part of the territorial waters of 12 mile allowed by the International Maritime Organization. So the Hormuz issue has not only divided the United States and the Europeans, that is NATO and EU, but also countries as far as New Zealand and Australia also have not come to the rescue of the United States in opening. And this shows the division within the Western alliance. And in the background, China and Russia have been in one way or the other supporting or helping through various ways Iran, since they have signed agreements in this regard, strategic and defense cooperation agreements. So all in all, the Iranians have shown their robust reaction to the most extensive bombing in recent history after Iraq invasion in 2003. But they have withstood this combined bombardment by Israel and the United States, although they have suffered quite a lot of damage. But this has paved the way for two things. One is the realization among the Gulf states that the United States is not a guarantor of their security. Secondly, its NATO allies and also in East Asia, that is Taiwan, South Korea, Japan, also have realized that ultimately America cannot be relied upon given its weaknesses exposed in the recent Iran invasion. That moving the air defense system from South Korea and Ukraine to save Israel, and getting a reaction, negative reaction from the Gulf countries. So all this has shown the American allies that it is not America is not in a position uh, as it was before to safeguard their security. So in that way, this is a tectonic change in the global order. And if I can come to the second part of the emerging new world order, this has been in the making ever since George Bush, after the Kuwait crisis and end of Soviet Union, announced the world order. And two things followed. One is this declaration, war, this declaration, the American century, and then the Israeli Netanyahu supported for change, which called for the elimination of regimes which were opposed to Israel, from Iran to Iraq to Syria to Libya, about 7 countries. So they have demolished the regimes one by one in all of these countries as per this agenda, which was peddled by Netanyahu and adopted by the neocons in America, who declared that 21st century will be the American century and war on terror after 9/11. So the Americans had a unique chance to safeguard their sole superpower status after 91. And but they got involved in endless wars, especially after 9/11 in Afghanistan, in Iraq, in Syria, in Libya, in Yemen, and also in Iran now, with the trillions of dollars lost and hundreds and thousands of lives lost. And American talk about bringing democracy and defending human rights has become an issue where nobody sees it seriously, because they have been undermining their own rules-based order with double standards, one in Ukraine and another one in Israel after the Gaza events, where the same principles were not applied when the ICC declared Netanyahu as a war criminal. They were not prepared to impose sanctions on Israel as they imposed on Putin and Russia after its special action, military action in Ukraine. So the world has seen in these two conflicts how the West acts protecting its ally, that is Israel, and punishing Russia with seizing of its foreign exchange and imposing very harsh sanctions like they did on Iran for the last 47 years. So the international institutions like the United Nations or its subsidiaries, particularly the International Court of Justice and UN Human Rights Council, and also there are other structures like IMF, World Bank, so on and so forth. They have been using selectively to perpetuate the old methodology, that is colonial mentality and dominating third world countries through economic exploitation and regime change and assassinations, so on and so forth, which America has become notorious in Latin America and also in Asia and Africa. You see, the Iranian Revolution in 79 probably could have been saved if the Americans had not overthrown the Mossadegh government democratically elected in 1953 and brought back Shah's rule, which turned into repressive, authoritarian, and very harsh rule, which led to the mobilization of the Iranian ulama, the mullahs, using religion, Islam, as the basis of ideology to overthrow the Shah of Iran. And since then, regime change has been their agenda against the Iranian Islamic Republic. They encouraged the Saddam regime to attack Iran in 1980, which continued for 8 long years. It is then that Iranian leaders decided to opt for missiles and nuclear program. For the last more than 30 years, they have been perfecting their war machinery and silently building a huge number of missiles and underground facilities. And that has led to an international crisis now. And a week ago, when President Trump threatened Iran with the end of civilization of that country and bringing back that country to Stone Age, one feared that he might use nuclear weapons. So this brought sharp reaction from both Russia and China, who warned against Netanyahu and Trump not to use nuclear weapons because of the incalculable harm and damage which it might do to the region, apart from killing lakhs and thousands of Iranians and spread of radioactive material to the entire region, including India. So, what has been happening is the major changes are first, the Iranians have got a place from the position of strength to negotiate with Israel and with Iran. As this was evidenced before the Islamabad talks, Iran virtually threatened not to join the talks if Israel doesn't stop its aggression in Lebanon. And also, if America doesn't release the frozen assets, which it agreed ultimately to do through Qatar banks. Secondly, the global South has been watching these double standards of the United States and Israel and the genocide which it has carried out for a long time, not just after the 23 October events, but also the confiscation of land and opposition to two-state solution and the violence in West Bank and continued occupation of Gaza and other territories. This has led to the United States condoning all of these activities, whereas elsewhere, they have held accountable countries, even the slightest violation of UN Security Council resolution. So in that way, I feel that more and more countries are now rallying behind BRICS, particularly Russia and China, because China has emerged as a major economic manufacturing power, and also through its Belt and Road Initiative, and also the conduct of its diplomacy in a very sophisticated manner, not only with Trump or the tariff issue, but also on Taiwan and many other issues. It has earned the goodwill of many third world countries, and also the emergence of BRICS. Although India as chairman could have played a much more robust role by convening a meeting and identifying this attack as violation of international law, but because of Prime Minister Modi's proximity to President Trump and Netanyahu, BRICS has virtually not taken any step so far to condemn this violent aggression in violation of all international norms against Iran. So I feel that the credibility of the institutions which had served well since the end of the Cold War, the West itself, primarily the United States itself, through its double standards, has undermined to a very large extent. And this ruinous economic policies using IMF and World Bank through structural adjustment program has led to popularization of many Afro-Asian Latin American countries, and they see a way out in the new deal, economic deal, which they find from China useful, and they are willing to give China the benefit of doubt, and they have become part and parcel of the Belt and Road Initiative. More than 130 countries, if I'm right, now support the Chinese Belt and Road Initiative, which has linked China with major and many countries of the global south, not to speak of Europe, also key countries in Europe. And Russia, with its hold over gas and oil, has shown that, you see, it can take on the NATO, the entire NATO, which, including the United States, support to Ukraine has been fighting by threatening to undermine Russia. So that was the strategy of the West, to isolate and weaken Russia so that they can focus on China in the second stage. But they took lightly what Iran could do. Now they are bedeviled with the quagmire virtually in the Gulf, in the West Asian region, because of Israel and their insatiable greed for oil after overthrowing Maduro illegally there also. So in that way, the American strategy has failed with Russia, and also Iran has been able to save itself, the regime there, and also its hopefully continued supply of oil to Iran. With the result, Iran has been able to withstand the attacks, probable attacks on Russia and China so far. And I think both of them have benefited, Russia and China, from this Gulf War. That is this unjust war, which I call the American-Israeli aggression against Iran. You know, it was completely avoidable, and America could have safeguarded its relations with much of the world, which was still willing to support on key issues. But now on Palestine issue, for example, more than 140 countries support the two-state solution, and Israel and America are isolated. So the global south is seeing the writing on the wall that America, through its short-sighted policies, it has alienated, and the greater Israel policy of Netanyahu has also led to isolation, and all of these internal issues of MAGA and the petrol prices in America, the inflation, the Wall Street turmoil, and the Epstein files, all of these have exploded within America, and yeah, the Trump administration's disdain and criticism of Canada, NATO allies, and practically every country which was part of the American alliance or Western alliance has now walked out of this American-led alliance, and there are major cracks. I don't think Spain will go back to American influence, or Canada will go back to American influence, or the rift with NATO will be repaired, because the future of NATO itself is a big question mark. So in that way, the institutions which served the old order have developed major cracks, and people have lost trust and faith in those structures, and hopefully new structures through BRICS and other issues will emerge, and hopefully things would shape our new quest for a new world order. I think I'll stop here and take questions from the viewers.
Thank you, Professor Pasha. Before going to the Q&A, now I request Professor Dilip Mohit to make a small intervention, maybe a 5 minutes intervention. Over to Professor Mohite. Your voice is not audible.
You have to unmute.
Professor Mohide, please unmute your mic. Professor Mohide, you are not audible. Still, you are not audible, Professor Mohite. Okay, we will come back. It's okay now?
No, still he has not unmuted.
No, we will come back to you. Now, we will straight away go to the Q&A session. The participants can unmute and speak, straight away ask questions, or you can just drop your questions to the Dropbox, and in that way we can go ahead. Please, or to all the participants. We will come back to Professor Mohide as and when his mic is all right.
Good evening, sir.
Yeah.
Thank you. First of all, thank you so much for this informative session. And also, so my name is Akanksha, and I'm a PhD scholar at University of Hyderabad. I
Okay,
have a
please.
very small
Please
question.
go ahead.
So,
Yeah.
yeah. So the question is, seeing the India stand on the recent international affairs, for instance, India stand. I mean, the India how India is taking stand on Israel. I mean, Israel-Palestine war, or U.S.-Israel attack on Iran, or Russia-Ukraine war. What as per you, what could be the possible implications of India's diplomacy and India's vision of becoming one of the great power in international affairs? Because, I mean, uh, as India was representing that it has a say at the international affairs, but seeing the past recent affairs, it is not coming forward with some, some solid initiative or some solid action. As per you, what could be the possible harm or the benefit India's diplomacy can experience in upcoming years?
Okay. We go to the second question. I will answer. I will take about 3 questions and then try to answer.
Hello, Professor Bond, can you hear me now?
Yeah, now you are audible. Now you are audible. All right. Okay, over to you.
Can
Yeah.
yeah.
Please.
Well, uh, Professor Pasha, I heard your talk with great interest, but I have a little bit of disappointment because most of your talk is more of a descriptive nature, and then I expected that it should have been analytical. It should also have covered some genesis of the issue that has taken place in the present context. I would like to mention very quickly, I go back to 1979 when Iranian revolution took place, Shah was driven out, and there was something called, I will briefly mention, there was something called elitist capitalist international clique, where Shah of Iran was part of the whole system. Now, after 79, the first thing that happened was a cause of insecurity among the Arab nations. And not only that, but they were divided between the elites and the masses. And then 3 points which I would like to quickly mention. Number one, that Iran, didn't have enough power to face 17 Arab nations which had attacked Israel in 1947. With the result, after 79, two or three important developments that took place were the rise of non-state actors, and they were let loose against Israel and the elitist forces of the sheikhs, which were ruling and controlling the Gulf region, Gulf resources, including oil, finance, whatever you may call it. Now, this was something which was very, very interesting and very important. Then, the whole issue was also related to Iran becoming a kind of a center where in 1979 I had written an article in that I had stated very clearly by one expert that the Gulf oil would last only for 70 or 80 years, then the oil wells will dry up. Now, that actually caused a lot of worry among the sheikhs, the rulers of the Gulf region. And they immediately, changed their stance, diplomatic stance, and joined, the Americans to have the maximum benefit out of this particular short oil, which was going to last for only about 70. They also started looking for alternatives to continue with their, wealthy regimes. Now, here one more important point that I would like to mention is that is the rise of non-state actors in the Gulf region. You take Hezbollah, that was actually sponsored and nurtured by Iran because Iran didn't have enough of capacity to deal with Israel combined with United States of America and maybe some European powers. So this was something, some development, and they wanted a cause and they used religion, Islam, as a base for mobilizing the masses against the elite. It was a more of a Marxist kind of a situation which had taken place in 79 and 89 period. Okay. Then one more point that I would like to mention is that when this particular war took place, you were talking about the world order. Now, the debate is between the unipolar world order, bipolar world order, or a multipolar world order. Now, my particular personal view is that we are heading towards bipolarity, but not only one particular axis power on one pole, but could be China, Russia, Iran together, though the Western powers, Westerners call it an axis of evil. But on the other side, the United States would remain as a kind of a center of power so far as the bipolarity is concerned. So we are slowly moving toward that kind of a bipolarity, but it is going to have a different kind of a structure and a nature. That is one thing. The next point that I would like to mention very quickly is that so far as Iran is concerned today, Iran is going to really sorry I go back. I beg your pardon. I go back to the United States, which probably Pasha declared that it has declined. Oh, fine. There's a debate going on about a decline, and he gave example of Korea, Vietnam, Afghanistan, etc., etc. But then you would notice that the United States recovered from the Korean War. It also recovered from the Vietnam War. It also recovered from the Afghanistan War. And then it also succeeded in crushing Soviet Union as one sees in the Cold War. Now, therefore, I personally feel that all these factors could have been taken together to put an analytical presentation rather than making it more descriptive. Anyway, I have many, many more points, but because of the time limit, I will not be able to say more. But I enjoy your talk, Professor Pasha, and look forward to have more interactions in future somewhere. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Mohite. Again, back to Professor Pasha.
Yeah, you see, in a 15-minute talk, you cannot trace the history of the entire region. Yeah, I may take at least 2 hours to elaborate on the issues which he has raised. You see, I have pointed out that the root cause of all of these problems are the Iranian Revolution and the American-Israeli reaction. So it is understood that export of revolution was an issue for the GCC state, which led to the creation of GCC states. And I must remind you that the US naval fleet was there even before the Iranian revolution, since early 70s. And this led to the suspension of the Bahraini constitution in 71 when the National Assembly refused to extend. So the Omanis had the American bases there in Masira and other places. And Prince Sultan base was there since Second World War in Saudi Arabia. The only thing, new bases which were added was in Kuwait and in Qatar in 96, and then in UAE much later. But the other three countries had hosted the American bases for a long time. There was no doubt about it. You see, the Hezbollah came about after the Israeli aggression in 1982. You would recall that Begin was the prime minister and Ariel Sharon was the defense minister. And that led to a disaster for the Begin regime, and he had to resign in disgrace. And Ariel Sharon also suffered a huge setback. And it was after that the Iranians built up through the Shias of Lebanon, the Hezbollah, and it became a major non-state actor on the borders of Israel, not in the Gulf region. There are many other non-state actors. Perhaps you could have mentioned the Islamic State, Al-Qaeda, which grew out of the Iraq war, invasion of Iraq, and they were virtually created by Israel and the United States and the West. There's no doubt about it. There's a lot of evidence available there from Hillary Clinton to American generals and so on and so forth, how the Islamic State fighters were treated in Israeli hospitals, so on and so forth. Yes, after the Iranian Revolution, the Saudis particularly used Islam, the Wahhabi brand, to export to undermine the Islamic regime in Iran. And some other countries used the Muslim Brotherhood, like Qatar, Turkey, Egypt. The Hamas paid allegiance to the Muslim Brotherhood in many ways, through which Muhammad Morsi came to power, and he was overthrown by the present dictator Abdulaziz Sisi. So the United States, after the 73 war, when they persuaded Saudi Arabia to use dollar for oil transaction, that itself laid the basis. And that basis was we will provide security to these Gulf monarchies, and you would buy and sell oil in the dollars, because America gave up the gold standard. And that's how dollar dominance started in 1973-74 after the Fourth Arab-Israeli War. And King Faisal was credited with using the oil as a weapon, which led to many-fold increase in oil. You see, the decline of USA, you have to see from many perspectives. One is the Trump view of NATO. He is openly saying that we cannot finance the military burden as we were doing, and the NATO countries have to increasingly fund the NATO budget beyond 5%, which they have agreed under pressure. And even with that, he has his own squabbles with NATO. He is not going to fund in a big way billions of dollars to safeguard what he says the Europeans from Russian or any other attacks. They have to defend themselves, and they have to support Ukraine also against the Russians. You see the American debt. They managed somehow the 2008 economic meltdown, the housing crisis, banking crisis. But the increasing debt which America has accumulated of $38 billion, it shows that it is no more in economic power, and it is living on borrowed money. And that is how the problems, even though America says it is self-sufficient in oil and in fact exporting oil and gas, but it has not been able to contain the high prices of oil, which have doubled in America, and inflation has crossed 3.3%, which is the highest in recent years, and also the stock market, which is being manipulated by corporate sector. So in that way, you see the capability of the United States, both economic, political, military, financial, and diplomatic, its isolation. All these are indications that it is not prepared to accept the decline. You may be optimistic, but I don't share your optimism as far as the comeback of the United States to its previous position of preponderance in all of these files. I gave you the example of American isolation, diplomatic isolation, why it is withdrawing from international organizations and threatening to cut UN budget also. Secondly, the financial aspect, the debt which it has. Now more and more countries are dumping the American securities, and they have to give high rate of interest if they want to sell their bonds, securities. And countries like France are taking their gold out of America and selling it in New York and buying in Paris. So what does it indicate? And Canada has signed the largest economic deal with China. And Spain also has followed, and Britain and other countries look forward to their growing interaction with not only China, but in the foreseeable future, they will patch up with Russia also, because they were getting cheap gas and oil, which has been cut off, or they have to buy expensive oil and gas from the United States. How can the United States supply bulk of the oil which it is using for itself to the rest of the world when it wants to choke Russian oil, Iranian oil, so on and so forth? Politically, also, you can see how squabbling between the two parties and this white supremacist and anti-immigrant policies have isolated many key members. Without immigrants, do you believe that America can progress as it has done in the previous era? I don't think so. From Latin American or Mexican construction workers, the real estate sector will decline, transport sector will decline. It will affect agriculture. The immigrants play a major role not only in these sectors which I mentioned, but also in R&D, education, and many other fields. And the kind of policies, fear and terror, which this administration is instilling, many people are not inclined to stay, and they'll go to the greener pasture or return to their home country and support development of their own countries, like many Indians are coming back to Bangalore, where I'm speaking from. So America, from all angles, from my perspective, from the military angle, just exposed during the Iran response, and the way the Americans have persuaded Iran for a ceasefire. It is not Iran which sought ceasefire. They were interested in continuing the war, despite their losses, so on and so forth. But Israel also pleaded for ceasefire last time. You remember the devastation Israel suffered. So in that way, it was causing calculable damage to American reputation. Their most advanced fighter jets, F-35, F-16s, were being shot and downed by the Iranians, using their air defense, and their missiles were causing havoc. And after neutralizing all the six countries, almost 17 air bases in the Gulf countries, they were able to silence virtually the Americans. They may have the best of weapons and navy and all, but their outdated technology and weapons will not be of much help in 21st century. and the aircraft carriers were sitting ducks, and they had to go away because of the fear from Iranian mines and drones and missiles, so on and so forth. So in that way, the world is looking forward to see how China, Russia, India, and Brazil, South Africa conduct themselves, and how an alternative multipolar world will emerge. And that is my take. Regarding the first question about Indian diplomacy in Iran, you see, India could have played an important role in this crisis, not only because of its prestige through nuclear weapons, fourth or fifth largest economy, its largest democracy, its strategic autonomy, so on and so forth. But it has put most of its eggs in the American and Israeli basket. Just 2 days before the aggression on Iran, Prime Minister Modi was in Israel. I don't know what he achieved there, but it definitely earned the. It did not earn the goodwill of Iran and many other supporters of Iran. We could have played much more bigger role than what Pakistan is doing, and we have allowed Pakistan. In fact, our Pakistan policy has failed. Instead of isolating, our strategic partner, United States, is helping improve Pakistan's image in the international arena, and also financially by giving military economic aid and allowing IMF, World Bank, and Islamic Development Bank and the Gulf countries to support Pakistan financially. So Pakistan has been elevated not only as a major non-NATO ally, but also a strategic partnership. And as long as Trump remains, I think he will continue to bank on Asim Munir, who is virtually the main center of power in Pakistan. You see, our interests, the main problem with our government was it believed the narrative that the Iran war aggression will be short and there will be regime change and it will not affect our oil and gas and interest in Gulf, that is Indian workers, trade and air air connectivity. So far, it has affected only our oil and gas and fertilizers and other chemicals and air connectivity. But if there is no viable ceasefire and if the war gets resumed, and if America and Israel bomb again Iran, Iran will retaliate, and whatever is left in the Gulf countries will be virtually destroyed, and our Indians will have a hard problem staying there with very little facilities there, and if oil, gas, and power and desalination plants are hit, our government will face a huge crisis like Saddam's invasion of Kuwait, where we had to airlift hundreds and thousands from Jordan, where the taxpayers had to fund this. So in that way, our diplomacy has not achieved, and through BRICS also, Iran pleaded, Russia and China also pleaded to hold a meeting and take appropriate decisions. But because of our dependence on Israel for technology and for strategic partnership with the United States, which means nothing in future, because we have alienated ourselves from many countries, because India was looked upon by the BRICS countries to play an important role on behalf of the emerging countries. So in that way, Indian diplomacy has lost a golden opportunity, and Pakistan has stolen the show with the help of the United States. And now there is an alliance between Pakistan and Saudi Arabia. And in this, virtually Turkey and Egypt are also partners, as the peace parleys indicate. It has also become close to Iran. So it has close relations with China, with Iran, with Turkey, with Egypt, with Saudi Arabia, with America, and many other countries, and it has rehabilitated itself despite all our efforts to isolate and brand as a exporter of terrorism. but key countries are supporting our enemy, and we have lost our credibility within the region itself. Instead of convening a meeting of foreign ministers of BRICS, or earlier on the tariff issue, which affected many countries in the global south, we have succumbed to pressure from the Trump administration, and we hardly open our mouth mm, to the pressure tactics which Trump has resorted to. Yes.
We have a few questions in our message box, drop box. Can you see it, or otherwise we will read it out for you?
Yes, please read it out one by one briefly. I will
Yeah,
note it down.
Devika, can you do it?
Yeah, yeah, I'll
Yeah,
do it.
please. Yeah.
So the first question we have from Shweta. Good evening, sir. My question is, wars these days see an increased involvement of non-state actors, owing to which winners of war are difficult to determine. The nature of war has shifted drastically, but doesn't this undermine the international norms which are now seen to be selectively applied? This is the first question from Shweta. Shall I read the next questions or
Yeah, please go ahead and read.
okay? Next question. I'm Vishal Singh, research scholar from University of Jammu. My question is, what are the options that Iran has in order to counter Hezbollah and Lavender AI, which are being used by Israel? How you think such software are shaping the nature of whole warfare? Then, good evening, sir. I'm a student of BA IR Honours with Research in Central University of Kerala. My question is currently, as an outcome of the Israel and US war on Iran, is there a changing regional balance of power or power vacuum in the Middle East? And last, we have a question from Gauri. How is the difference among Western alliance with US will act as boon or bane for the Western alliances in geopolitics? That's it, sir.
Okay, thank you. Regarding the non-state actors, you see, there is no dearth of non-state actors in this area and in the world. One of the first was Hezbollah, which emerged in 82. After that, Hamas emerged in Gaza. And in one way, the PLO also, until recently, it was a major non-state actor in Lebanon, before that in Jordan. You see, all these non-state actors can be traced to the invasions and injustices in this region. If you take the Palestinian PLO, it thrived and succeeded on the refugees which were expelled by Israel in 48 and then 67, and the appropriation of their territory and denial of a state for them. And it resorted to armed conflict until 88, when they recognized Israel under 242 and renounced terrorism and so on and so forth. Hezbollah emerged because of the Israeli aggression and occupation in 82, which they continued the southern part for 18 years. From 1882 to 2000, they occupied, and they devastated the southern part and Beirut particularly. And that led to the emergence of Hamas, the Hezbollah, with the support of Shias and many other Sunnis also supported, because Israel has a grand plan to keep the Litani water river for itself because of the water scarcity in Israel. It has been eyeing that river water for a long time, and the territory also, which is good for agriculture and strategic purposes. So Hezbollah was a purely a reaction or a creation due to Israeli aggression. The other non-state actors like Al Qaeda, Islamic State, and many others which flourished in Syria during the fight against Bashar al-Assad. All these emerged because of the American, Israeli, and Arab cooperation. Saudi Arabia, Qatar also cooperated in funding, training, arming these non-state actors, which created havoc in Iraq and Syria and in many other places. Even in Saudi Arabia, they took almost 10 years. The former crown prince took 10 years to eradicate Al Qaeda, which had penetrated in every nook and corner of Saudi Arabia. Then you have the Al Qaeda in Arabian Peninsula, in Yemen. Then you have the splinter groups following the overthrow of Gaddafi, Boko Haram, and in Sahel countries and in North Africa, so on and so forth. So the destabilization of regimes from the Mujahideen Khalq also is a non-state actor which is supported by the United States against the Islamic regime. Then you have the Kurds also, PKK, and many others, SDF, supported by Israel and America against Turkey and Iran and Iraq and Syria. So many non-state actors have thrived because of the foreign intervention, Israeli wars in this region, and even many other outside countries which have supported this. There's no doubt about it. They have their own place in many. Hezbollah has become a political party. It is part of the Lebanese government. The Islamic State still continues to control large swath of territory in Syria and also in parts of Iraq, despite the war against them, where Russia also participated, Iran also supported in crushing them, but they continue to thrive. Then you have Al Qaeda also still
I will take it.
So the second question is Iran strategies. Iran has followed this policy of offense is the best part of defense. So the regime change agenda of Israel and the United States and the West since 79 has led Iran to extend its support to many allies like Hezbollah, like Hamas, like Houthis, or Bashar al-Assad, formerly in Syria, and then the Popular Mobilization Force, and many other actors throughout this region and beyond. So this attempt by the Americans and the Israelis to overthrow the Islamic regime has been the root cause for much of the turmoil, violence, terrorism, so on and so forth, in which Iran also has contributed to an extent to put pressure on Israel and the United States and the monarchies, which have joined hands with Israel and some with Israel and through the Abraham Accords like Bahrain and UAE, and indirectly Saudi Arabia, and more importantly with the United States, which had bases in all of these countries. So Iran's strategy has been to not only prepare itself with missiles and military capability to defend itself, and also bypass the economic sanctions through supply of oil and barter trade and so on and so forth. These allies also have put pressure not only on the GCC countries but also on Israel and the United States. You see, the third point was this war on Iran by the United States and Israel. What has been the impact on the regional balance? See, the writing on the wall is very clear. These Gulf monarchies thought that they will prosper, they will shine and build up infrastructure like Dubai built the finest hotels, infrastructure, tourist places, tourist hub, and aviation hub. Qatar also followed through. All of these countries were in competition to develop, economically develop their economies alternatively from away from oil, to develop from non-oil sources. But at the same time, they continued with their hostility with Iran. as was shown. Even though all these countries promised Iran that they will not allow their airspace to be used against Iran, but America had positioned itself in all of these countries through the bases, like many bases in Kuwait after the Saddam eviction. More than 14,000 American soldiers were there. In Bahrain, as I said, the Fifth Fleet had its headquarters, naval headquarters, American headquarters. The Central Command was headquartered in the Al Udaid base in Qatar. Then bases in Saudi Arabia, Prince Sultan base, large base, America had access to it. Then in UAE and in Oman. And of course, in Jordan, they had bases. All these were targeted by Iran, and it has shown how vulnerable these countries are to Iranian military capability. And some, except Bahrain and UAE, may not, which have followed complete pro-Israel, pro-America, and anti-Iran policy. They may go back to the old policy with America. But Qatar, Kuwait, Oman, and Saudi Arabia have, I think, developed cold feet of putting all their eggs in the American basket, and they are looking forward to having alliances with other countries, whether it is China or Russia, buying weapons alternatively, or with other European countries, and independently develop their capabilities. So in that way, the regional balance is now in favor of Iran, supported by China and Russia, and United States and the West has taken a beating. I don't think it will be the same if Iran continues to use the Strait of Hormuz and oppose the military bases in the GCC countries. As far as the Western alliances are concerned, there is open rift between America and NATO. I don't see much of a future for NATO and also for the European Union because it is disintegrating fast on a variety of issues, whether it is Ukraine or Russia or China or America or Greenland, or on economic issue of gas and oil, or simply the Belt and Road Initiative, and the incapacity of the European leaders to address the pressing issues. Instead, they are trying to paper over their problems and becoming more and more authoritarian, and enacting laws to crush the people's movement, which has been rising in all of these countries. And it may also lead, ironically, to the growth of right-wing parties, like you have in Italy, in Germany, and many other countries are going to witness a right-wing shift because of all of these combination of domestic, regional, and global problems, which the Europeans have been unable to solve by themselves, and banking on the United States is no more an option for them. So the Western alliance system is developed major cracks. I don't think Canada will go back to America, or America will go back to NATO days after the Second World War. Those days are over, and America will be consumed by its own economic problems, to resetting its military machine, and looking after more inward, like Latin America, with its focus, and less on West Asia, or thinking of confrontation with Russia through Ukraine. That is almost over, and confronting China, because these have shown sufficient capabilities of their willingness to economically challenge America, and also militarily they have prepared both Russia and China in a very subtle way. They have developed because of the pressure from the West, particularly the United States. I don't think America will make the foolhardy step to challenge militarily China. If it does, it will get a reply. That will be the end. That's how the opposition leader in Taiwan has visited China. which is a good beginning. They have realized that they cannot completely depend on America for the defense of Taiwan, which China can take in very short period. And Japan also is exploring the possibility of using its plutonium and uranium for developing nuclear weapons. And Korea also may have to think about its reconciliation with Northern Korea. And this American support is not going to last long on these faraway places because the projection of American power through aircraft carriers is redundant now in an age of high technology, AI, and undersea missiles, submarines, nuke submarines, and drones, so on and so forth. This has completely changed the modern warfare, which is much cheaper than the huge armada of aircraft carriers. That is an era which was good enough until recently, but in the future, this will be a burden, and America will not be able to project its power and sustain it through its broken economy, the huge military budget, and the debt it has accumulated. So I'm optimistic about, unlike the others, I'm optimistic about the decline of the United States and confining itself to its own affairs, which it will be good, rather than poking its nose to undermine Russia and China and dictate terms even to India when the American ministers or secretaries came here and lambasted that they made a mistake by allowing China to grow for the last 25 years, and they will not repeat that mistake. As far as India is concerned, they want to crush and nip it in the bud, which is not possible. The Indian people, Indian economy, Indian civilization will not allow, even though this government may not be in a position to say a harsh thing to the administration on this issue. But future governments will pick up the thread, and India will play its role commensurate with its power. Thank you, Professor Mohan.
Thank you, Professor Pasha, for unraveling the complexities of the situation in the Gulf region, and of course, your optimism about the decline of the United States of America and all. Now we are coming to the concluding part of it. Professor Rajendra Nair, the director of ISDA, the Institute for Study of Developing Areas, will be concluding the session. Over to Professor Nair.
Hello, can you
Yes, please.
hear?
You're audible.
Can you hear? Can you hear me?
Yeah,
Ah,
you're audible, please.
yeah. Dear friends, we are listening to a brilliant, very relevant to be discussed in the present day global context. A brilliant speech by Professor Pasha. Imperialism never has shown concern over humanity and attainment of universal peace. Their ultimate objective is to attain power and control over the whole wealth of the world, built up and controlled and protected over these years by the hard work of the common people of the world. They fought many numerous wars for power from Vietnam, Cuba, Palestine, Iran, Iraq, and in many Latin American countries. The brutalities destroyed lakhs of lives of innocent civilians and demolished centuries old civilizations. Here, Professor A.K. Pasha very excellently presented the hidden agenda behind the Gulf War and its consequences in the rest of the world. I express hearty gratitude to him on behalf of ISDA and all those who are present here in this webinar. I also thank Dr. Mohan Pillai, Chairman of ISDA, and Dr. K.S. Pavitra, General Editor of ISDA Journal, who have made introductory remarks in this webinar. And hearty thanks to Professor Dilip Mohit and many other young researchers who asked questions and made this webinar a grand success. And I thanks everyone who is present here on behalf of ISDA and all the academicians present here. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank
Thank
you.
you all. You may leave the meeting.
Thank you.